if there aren't jobs that require creativity, if there aren't jobs that require imagination, and if there aren't jobs that require essentially creating worlds that don't yet exist, then we're in a lot of trouble. And I think that an engineer who doesn't understand, let's say, the historical context of the downtown in which they're building their bridge, then they're missing, something really vital.
It graces the walls of museums and galleries, plays out on stages and in concert halls, or comes to life in the pages of a book. The arts, visual, performing, or literary, are a great source of entertainment, fulfillment, even joy for many. They play a vital role in the education of many UMaine students and in communities across Maine and beyond. I'm Ron Lisnett, and this is the Maine Question podcast. As Justin Wolf, a professor of art history at UMaine, points out, the arts aren't something separate from other aspects of our lives. Creativity and imagination, traits that are both essential to the creative process, are necessary for everyday problem solving. The Arts Initiative at UMaine promotes and even celebrates that fact. It was created to increase resources and support for the arts, to enhance their visibility and significance on campus and beyond. Breaking down silos to allow art and science or business or engineering to work together. That's the topic we tackle on this episode of the Maine Question podcast as we ponder the question, how can art help enrich our lives and solve everyday problems? With 4 guests on this episode, we'll start with a round of introductions, just to keep things straight.
My name is George King, and I'm the dual role Senior Executive Director of Cultural Engagement and also the Executive Director and Curator of the Zillman Art Museum.
Hi, I'm Gretchen Faulkner. I'm the Director of the Hudson Museum and the Collins Center for the Arts.
Amber?
I'm Amber Roth. I'm Assistant Professor of Forest Wildlife Management in the School of Forest Resources and the Department of Wildlife Fisheries and Conservation Biology here at the University of Maine.
Right. And last but not least, Justin.
Yeah, Justin Wolf. I am Professor of Art History in the Department of Art, and I'm also Chair of the Department of Art.
The fact that we got this esteemed group together at the same time, I consider this podcast a success already. So thank you all for making the time. We appreciate it. Maybe let's start with you, George. Give us the origin of this arts initiative. How did it come to be? What is the goal? What's the genesis of this?
Well, the University of Maine Arts Initiative was established by the Office of Research with support of the president. And the aim was to get all of UMaine's art professors, cultural arts units together to begin working on projects together, collaborating, innovative ways to link the creative research to other areas of the university, STEM areas, and really to inspire and encourage collaboration among scholars who may not typically collaborate. So through these initial seed grants from the Office of Research, they were created to inspire that collaboration and it, while advancing creative activity, also advance UMaine's research potential in the arts and in the STEM area.
So for the rest of you, when you heard this arts initiative was getting underway, what did you think? Were you excited to hear about it?
Oh, I was thrilled. I was delighted to hear about it, and I'm really grateful for it. I will add, I think there's some superb research and teaching taking place at UMaine in the area of the arts, both the fine arts, visual arts, performing arts, and we had some wonderful collections and exhibitions. And it was refreshing and morale boosting to have the vice president's office, recognize that the arts are vital to the mission of a Research One, institution, and that we have a lot to offer, but also that the Office of Research has a lot to offer us to advance, our projects. So, it's been wonderful, and don't want to sound cynical, but perhaps a little bit overdue.
Gretchen, how about you?
I saw it as an exciting opportunity for the Hudson Museum to implement some projects that we had kind of on the back burner for a while, and was really excited about the opportunity of the arts supporting the R1 mission of the University of Maine.
For Amber, you look at everybody in this group and you're a bit of the outlier just because of what you do, but what did you think and how does what you do sort of fit into this picture?
Yeah, so when I worked at a prior institution, I collaborated with an arts professor in visual arts, and we had really wonderful collaboration. And when I moved to the University of Maine, I kind of missed that collaboration and the synergy that happens when you have conversations about issues where you bring in perspectives from both science and arts, and it gives you a new way of thinking about how to solve problems. And I missed that. And so I was really excited by this initiative because it kind of gave me an opening to kind of move back into that interface where I kind of felt it was missing. And, maybe that's reflective of what Justin said, that, maybe it was missing not just for me, but missing for a lot of other people on campus as well. So this was a great opportunity to kind of use other parts of my brain and think more creatively and think about how arts and sciences can work together to solve problems in new ways.
So George, obviously the arts are important here as an academic mission, but it goes beyond that. It goes into the local community and across the whole state. Can you sort of speak to that? It's not just a thing happening on campus here at UMaine for the students.
Well, it is true. Our reach within the cultural units and the departments related to the arts activities is extensive. In the case of these projects too, the Arts Initiative is really extending that research through these projects and making a general awareness of the larger citizenry of research activities at UMaine. It's really shining a greater lens on arts and culture at UMaine, and also what the wonderful things that are happening related to research activities at UMaine as well.
Justin, you of course teach in the arts, so that's your bread and butter. What does this do to foster sort of a feeling of support, for the inherent worth of the arts here at UMaine?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I again, as I was saying in my earlier statement, I think first and foremost, it gives institutional acknowledgement to the value of the arts, broadly defined, to the broader mission of a Research One institution. We all know that nationally, internationally, the discourse around employment and so forth there's been a great deal of emphasis on STEM. And I don't want to create any kind of a tension or opposition. I mean, quite the opposite, between the arts and STEM. But it's nice to have the institution acknowledge that the arts and the kind of creative problem solving that is involved and the critical thinking involved with the arts, both the making of the arts and of course, the sort of evaluation and research of the arts are really vital to not just the institution, but to the state. I mean, Maine is a state with a very deep and rich art historical history, needless to say. And it's a kind of history and an attitude that the university is really wise to tap into, and to really sort of generate a statewide conversation about the value of the arts to all the people of Maine. So again, more than anything, it is an affirmation of the great research that's already been done, and more practically, it's nice to have a bit more, financial and institutional support around our projects too.
We've mentioned it a couple times now. UMaine is now an R1 status university, so that's the highest you can reach in terms of a research level. How does this initiative play into that specifically? I mean, there is research. We think of research as test tubes and labs and and building bridges and stuff like that. But there's research going on in the arts. You might call it creative works or creative achievement, but research happens in the art world too, right?
Yeah, this is Justin. I'll just say very briefly, I think that if you look at other R1 institutions around the nation, they have a really broad support for the arts, for the humanities, and for the hard science disciplines and the social sciences, of course. You need that full portfolio, that sort of holistic picture, I think, to really deserve R1. And my understanding is that part of the discussions about UMaine becoming R1 was that it needed a bit more demonstration of the institutional support of the arts. Not that the arts researchers on campus weren't producing excellent work in the areas of hard research and in the areas of creative achievement, but that there needed to be greater synergy between the institution and its support for the arts. So this is a critical step, I think, and a necessary one for R1 achievement.
Okay, I've got one comment. Our project was a collaboration with the Advanced Structures and Composites Center, which is basically an entity that does not really integrate the arts. But through our project, the 3D replication project of the Tlingit frog helmet, they attracted attention from the Smithsonian and now see a pathway to replication of indigenous objects for other institutions. So it got them thinking in new directions, looking at their technology and how it could be used for arts institutions.
That was the seed grant that you received, right, Gretchen?
Correct.
I'd like to add I agree with Justin's comments. Arts are extremely important for R1 status. This is being centers for inquiry and creative thought. And we did an interesting exercise. We looked at, and I'm just commenting on the art museum side of things. We looked at what we're comparing apples to apples. We were looking at how many R1s that are land grant that also are flagship institutions. And what we noted is that there are 24 of them that fit that criteria. And in the case of the art museum, all of them have really strong and noted art institutions, art museums. So they value collections and creative research that happens in the museum field, but also, the collections and things that are available as a resource for faculty and student researchers and things like that. So I definitely think that the arts are very vital to that R1 status. And when you just survey the land and that little exercise that we we were very happy to see that the R1s all had very strong art museums.
So what does this look like on the ground? You mentioned a couple times seed grants. Can each of you talk about we heard, Gretchen, what your seed grant, what that funded, but the seed grants the rest of you were able to get. Talk about those and what is happening with those.
Well, the first round of seed grants, this is Justin, the University of Maine Arts Initiative seed grants. The first round was for projects that were to be completed by the end of, I believe it was January 23. And so those are, for the most part, complete. The seed grant that I was involved with was a co-PI on, along with David Hart from the Mitchell Center, Jasmine Saros from the Climate Change Institute, and Susan Smith, graduate coordinator of the intermediate programs, and myself, was called the Art and Creative Ecology series. And it funded a number of different kinds of events, from keynote lectures to faculty workshops, to creative Zoom events, and to graduate student workshops around this concept of creative ecologies, which is a really sort of international, a notion of international scope that most basically, I think, is at the heart of the UMaine Arts Initiative, which is the sort of creative intersection and the creation of new kinds and modes of thinking that connects STEM ways of knowing with humanities ways of knowing, with creative ways of knowing and imaginative ways of knowing, and this is really key, to address key issues that impact humanity. In our particular case, it was around questions of ecology, also, ecological sustainability, and also social sustainability. And so we were able to, without getting too granular, bring in some of the top scholars in the field to introduce our faculty and students to this really fascinating concept, and how perhaps, and this is key, how this seed grant might seed additional funding and seed also greater collaboration among curious folks on this campus about ways that we can come together and create new ways of knowing to solve really pressing problems. So it was a broad project that had broad appeal as well. So very exciting, and hopefully it will seed new funding and new collaborations both on and off campus.
Now, Amber, I know you study birds, so seed grant almost sounds like a pun, but just talk about how you were able to leverage the funding that you got.
Well, that's a good question. A lot of my research is focused on migratory animals, birds and monarch butterflies. A big part of what we're trying to understand is what's happening with these animals, and these animals are in sharp decline. Why is that? What's happening on their migrations? And part of our way of learning about what's happening is using some newer technology called the MODIS wildlife tracking system, which involves putting small tags on animals and following their movements, and having an automated receiving system that's always listening for these tags. Is a really integral part of the research. And so a part of the seed grant project was actually installing one of these automated receiving stations on the University of Maine campus that will help us with our research, not just my research, but as an opportunity for all scientists across campus to use this new infrastructure. And this infrastructure is part of a network that scientists all over the world are using. So it's not just about, what's happening at the University of Maine, but it's about research being conducted all over the Western Hemisphere, and how we're part of that network, and a more integral part of that network now than we were before. So this is kind of helping to facilitate new projects for research and for education. This is a great opportunity for students to learn about physics and computer science and biology as they think about how the technology works. And so it really can blend a lot of different fields together in our attempt to kind of understand what's happening with these animals. And the arts part of our seed grant, we were very much interested in an important conservation issue, which was bird window collisions, and how can we bring the science and art together to address that issue, and do so by using through the education of high school students, and kind of show them that you can bring together art and science in a meaningful way to solve conservation problems, and kind of showed them some of the science, gave them the opportunity to create some art in the form of window clings that would actually create visual deterrence from birds striking windows, but to do so in a really attractive, aesthetically pleasing way, allow students to kind of really be creative and thinking about the designs they want to use, and making them practical, so that we're actually saving birds in the end.
Well, and if I could just add to that, the seed grant, the Zillman Art Museum's collaboration with Amber and her student researchers, PhD students and others, it truly was multifaceted project in the sense that, and thematic, because the general topic was birds. So for this same group of students, high school students from underserved areas of the state in Washington County, they had the opportunity to engage in a curatorial practice project at the museum that related to various bird species from a collector that had loaned the works to us. So they actually curated an exhibition and researched and wrote about the birds and were involved in the aspects of the curatorial process there. And then also the project too, if we think about the idea of introducing students to careers and experiences working with researchers on the UMaine campus, that certainly happened with Amber, the educational component of that, which happened on the Orono campus as well as the museum. So these students got a really in-depth experience of the UMaine campus and researchers and what they're doing day in and day out at the university. So we really think that it hit a number of key points and aims that we had from the outset of designing the project, which in itself was truly collaborative as we kind of put this project together. And that's the interesting thing about collaboration. So really on the front end, before you really embark on these projects, that we had some really wonderful conversations about what is possible and how this would benefit the students, the mission of the museum, and advance UMaine's research areas and research potential in Amber's particular area with the MODIS Wildlife Tracking Station. So
that's great. Gretchen, you mentioned that the idea that a direct source of funding really fosters a feeling of support for the arts. Can you talk about that?
The arts have specific funding agencies that they can apply for funding for, but this project was an interdisciplinary project that involved using the Advanced Structures and Composites Center for 3D replication, as well as involving intermediate students in the specific project. It was innovative. The only other institution that really has been doing this is the Smithsonian on a limited scale. The other thing that we wanted to do was document the project, create an exhibit, as well as create a technical publication that would assist other institutions in the process. So the technical publication gave sort of a history of the object. It also presented Tlingit voice, the cultural context of the object, and then had a technical discussion of the specific technology that the Advanced Structures and Composites Center used. And then things that they should be thought about in the future. Who maintains the digital data that was generated from the project? The information for the object scans, whose intellectual property is that? So it also raised some interesting questions and things to think about in the future.
Part of the job of the arts sometimes is to communicate an idea to a broader audience or the public. And Amber, you're a scientist, but you need to also communicate your ideas and what you find. So can you each or anybody jump in, just talk about the idea of using the arts to communicate?
I would say sometimes communication isn't the strong suit of some scientists. And so working with artists provides an opportunity to think about new ways of communicating. In particular, like I think about some of the work I've been involved with, and I think about I talk to people about like putting things on their windows to prevent bird window collisions, for example. And one of the feedbacks I get is well, we can put this, there's tape you can put on your windows to prevent collisions. They're like vertical strips of tape, and people say, well, I look out my window and I feel like I'm in a prison cell. And and there's better ways of applying things to your windows that don't need to make you feel like you're incarcerated. So, so I think there's, and people don't want that kind of, that's not the message that they want to send to people in their home either, right? And so, so just in terms of visual communication, how do we make it so that people want to do the right thing and make it attractive for them to do so, and make it something that people want to do, and not feel like they have to do it, but they don't like the way it looks. So I think there's a lot of ways in which we can improve the science by working with artists to kind of come up with better ways of communicating solutions, and a lot of times they can bring in social and cultural perspective that might be missing, and might really improve acceptance of projects in the end. So
Yeah, this is Justin again. I mean, Amber, I really love the way that you explain that art doesn't just serve science through visualizing data, right? I mean, there is a field of data visualization in which data can be, literally visualized through graphs or through color, charts. But the arts have a lot more to offer science than just the visualization of data. And the arts deal with emotional and imaginative language, and emotional and imaginative ways of understanding things. And I think that working together with science, right, that artists can amplify both scientific information, but also these essential ways of understanding the world to solve these common problems. Data alone is not enough. And the arts can imagine futures, and that's a really vital thing. And I think Amber explained that well. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Gretchen.
Yeah, that's okay. I guess what I was going to point out is that museums present to the public. We present our collections, we present exhibitions in a way that engages the public. And many scientific publications, the technical publications, are difficult for the public to access. So we bring a way of communicating information and data to the public that allows them to access this.
Does this sort of shine a light on the importance of the arts and in the creative economy and the creation of jobs? There are jobs, we think of jobs as engineers and doctors and lawyers and what have you, but there are jobs in the creative economy and in the arts world, right? So is this helping to promote that a little bit? George,
So
maybe
we already have an example, Ron. The Hudson Museum collaborated also with the intermediate programs. And one of the individuals that collaborated on our project is a boat builder. And he is currently helping the Portland Museum of Art with a little conservation project on a canoe that belongs to the Hudson Museum. So it introduced him to the museum field and then allowed him an opportunity to help prepare an object in our collection for exhibition at the Portland Museum of Art. So it had a direct spin-off in the project.
Ron, I get questions all the time from parents. What's my student what kind of a job are they gonna get with an arts degree, whether it's art history or art education or studio art? I really want to emphasize that there really is a false narrative out there that there aren't jobs in these fields. Of course, there are jobs for engineers and for computer scientists, and for biologists and so forth. But what I would say to anybody is that if there aren't jobs that require creativity, if there aren't jobs that require imagination, and if there aren't jobs that require essentially creating worlds that don't yet exist, then we're in a lot of trouble. And I think that an engineer who doesn't understand, let's say, the historical context of the downtown in which they're building their bridge, then they're missing, something really vital. So on a practical level, our students do get jobs. There are jobs in the arts, museums, nonprofits, publishing, galleries. Studio artists themselves are essentially entrepreneurs, if you think about it, right? And then, of course, academia, which is, I will say, I think everyone here will agree, a wonderful place to work. So yes, it's a really important question, and I appreciate you asking it, because I think part of this initiative it's part of its mission is to dispel the myth that there isn't economic value, both socially, culturally, and individually or personally in the arts and creative activity.
I think to add to that, I mean, one of our goals at the Zillman Art Museum as well is to introduce our UMaine students to careers in the museum field, to make sure that it is on their radar as they, if they're studio art or art history, to understand that there are a wide range of career options in museums. And we've done that through our partnership with the art department and our curatorial internship program, where our very talented UMaine students have gone on, in many cases, to graduate studies at very competitive programs. But also bringing it back to the UMaine Arts Initiative with this seed grant, we also wanted to expose these high school students to careers in museums, and with a little behind the scenes glimpse of what the various staff members do to support the operations of the museums and collections care and things like that. So, and on the museum education side. So we think that that's very important to introduce students to careers in the field as well.
So we always sort of end with a question sort of along these lines, but for all of you, just maybe a quick comment where you see all of this headed. What might be learned from the first round of seed grants as this initiative gets off the ground here? Where could this head in 5 to 10 years? What do you guys think?
Justin here, I'll chime in quickly. More funding. External funding, and I think that's very much a part of these seed grants, is that they would seed additional funding, both internal and external. So certainly in the area, the grant area that I was working, the notion of creative ecologies, love to get more funding to work with other institutions and other scholars to explore this really rich concept further. And then, perhaps, as you say, 10 years out, perhaps the establishment of new institutes and centers on this campus that are interdisciplinary, that bring together social scientists, and of course, humanities and arts, intellectuals, to address the world's most pressing problems.
Amber, Gretchen, your thoughts?
I can jump in. So I think a lot of people think of art and science as separate silos. And I think this is a great program that highlights the value of integrating the two together, and that by doing so, you come up with new tools, new approaches, and ways of doing things that may not have happened otherwise. And so bringing together these different perspectives actually makes for better solutions in the end. So I think that that's a really important product of this, is showing that the value of bringing the arts and sciences together.
Gretchen, your thoughts?
Yeah, our project was a proof of concept, and I think again, that was key, and that once the initial work was done, it means that we can then leverage additional funding for other replication projects of different types here.
I'll just say that the UMaine Arts Initiative, it's still in its infancy as a group. So in the first year, quite a lot was learned, and how the whole nature of collaboration and bringing people together. So I think, as we move forward with these projects, we were able to identify through the first round some very successful outcomes and what worked really well with these types of projects. And all of the seed grant recipients gave a public presentation of their findings of the project. So now we have a model of success. So it's not really creating something from scratch. There's kind of a roadmap for future collaborations, and I'm hoping with continued support and increased financial support in this area, we'll be able to have additional grant rounds. We do have the second seed grant round and a one that relates to tying into MEIF funding as well. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to grow the initiative and continued collaboration with other colleagues across the UMaine.
Well, it's exciting to think about where this has been already and where it could head. But thank you so much, all of you, for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for checking us out. You can find all of our episodes on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud, UMaine's YouTube page, as well as Amazon and Audible. Questions or comments? Send them along to Maine Question at maine.edu. This is Ron Lisnett. We'll catch you next time on the Maine Question.